Welcome to Sharp Football Analysis. Today, Rich and I are going to talk about a rash of running back injuries, the fantasy future of Ashton Jeanty, and preview the most interesting games of Week 5. So make sure you stick around. What is up, everybody? This is Sharp Football Analysis. I'm here. My name is Raymond. Rich is here. We're going to talk about Week 5 of the fantasy football season. But before we do that, I do want to mention we have a great offer right now over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can get all of our Week 5 betting recommendations for just $5, normally $99.99, now just $5 over at sharp.football. That $5 gets you all of our betting recommendations this week, including our NFL props. And it also gets you all of our fantasy football content from Rich, in which he goes player by player through every game of the Week 5 slate. It's the most comprehensive preview you will get for the week. We call them the worksheets. They're over at Sharp Football Analysis. Go and check them out. Take advantage of this deal and get access to those. On top of that discount, we're going to have our ladder prop promotion this week. Our ladder prop bets crushed on Monday night. We went 2-0 on the bottom rung, and we hit ladders of plus 200, plus 220, plus 230, and plus 550. For this week, Warren Sharp is picking his favorite ladder play. He's going to face a $100 bet on every rung up to plus 1,000. If the bet hits, he will randomly select subscribers who join for $5 this week and give them the full value of the ticket. That means if the plus 1,000 rung hits, one of you will receive $1,000 cash. That's awesome. We've been hitting the ladders. We love a ladder around these parts. Make sure you take advantage of this deal. Go to sharp.football. You'll see the link. Make sure you take advantage. All right, that's done. Now we got to talk to Rich, another man who loves ladders. I think we're team ladder here at Sharp Football Analysis. I think.
You know, my father-in-law is 73, and like we went over his house, and or sorry, I should call him Dad for you. Yeah, you know, but you know, and he's like up on the roof, and I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like you're way too old to just be like on your roof. And yeah, so you would be thinking about ladders there. It's like you're old men climbing up on roofs. It's like, what are you doing? He's like, there's a stick on my roof. I'm like, what? Who cares? It'll blow off. Like, deal with it. Like,
I always enjoy. We obviously have to do that for my father-in-law as well, who I do not call Dad, and that has been a point of conversation, I think, on the podcast before between you or I. I do love my father-in-law, John. John's a wonderful guy, but I call him John. He's not my dad. I already have two of those, but. We go over there, but I'm obviously anybody watching on video. By the way, if you're not watching on video, go to YouTube, subscribe. Anybody watching on video can see how fat my face is and know that I am not allowed on top of ladders. So unfortunately, my wife is the one that goes up onto the roof, and she's not pleased. My father-in-law is a great example of how autism has existed for a long time. We just didn't diagnose it. And he's decided of all of these little things that have to happen on the roof every single year. I can't wait. It's almost that time here in Texas. It actually cooled down, Rich. We got down to like 85. It was wonderful. What a lovely time to be alive. You know what? It's not lovely is how many running back injuries we had this week, especially when those and receivers. But the receiver. Yeah, well, the receivers, it was like, all right, we know that it's done, right? As soon as Malik Neighbors' injury happened, we were like, all right, he's out for the season, unfortunately. As soon as the Tyreek Hill injury happened, I refused to watch that again. Like, that was awful, right?
It was like the Dak injury when Dak got hurt.
Oh, that one. Anyway, so as soon as those happen, we're like, all right, we're done. But then like Trey Benson leaves and doesn't play in the last like part of the game. We're like, I don't know, maybe they just wanted the passing game back in there. Bucky Irving plays through his foot injury, or I believe it's a foot injury now. We've confirmed, and like, all right, we're probably fine. And then late Tuesday, early Wednesday comes out, and Trey Benson's on injured reserve. Bucky Irving, it looks like, is going to miss this week, although we don't even really know that yet. We record these on Thursday morning. He did miss practice on Thursday. I would expect him to miss this week, but we don't know how long he's going to miss. And so it was one of those things where we could plan for the wide receivers. Like we could think about Malik Washington and Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson, but the running backs like really hit us pretty quick here. And I guess the question moving forward then is, what are we doing with these backfields? And I guess the Arizona backfield's more important because we already know how long he's going to be out, but it also like, can you really get excited about anybody in this Arizona backfield?
Probably not really, because under Drew Petzing, they've always kind of utilized like an early down back and like a passing game back. So I would My assumption would be that Emari Demercado would just stay in his role and be kind of like still that passing down back, that long down and distance, 4-minute drill, 2-minute drill back. And Michael Carter will slide into the early down stuff. We saw that at the end of last year. Now, Demercado wasn't active, but Michael Carter did slide into that role with Benson and James Conner out at the end of last year. So I would assume that's the case. But the Arizona Cardinals, we've talked about it a few times, even last week with Benson, when we talked about him potentially being a league winner, is that this team has not been able to run the football effectively this opening month, whether that has to do with the loss of Clayton Adams, their offensive line, just the state of their offense. The Arizona running backs are 28th in the league in success rate rushing. They are 30th in the league in rate of runs to go for a first down or touchdown. Maybe the Tennessee Titans are the cure, or at least a short-term cure for that, after they've allowed RB1 scoring weeks the past 2 weeks to Jonathan Taylor and Woody Marks. But this is still a run game that's tough to have a lot of faith in. Also, if it's a compartmentalized backfield, how many receptions are you getting from a guy like Michael Carter, even if he has that role? Is he more touchdown dependent than Demercado's touchdown dependent because he's just like a full PPR flex type guy? It's kind of a messy situation. It's not that exciting to chase. Obviously, we're in a world where bye weeks and injuries and you need bodies. So the matchup's there for you, at least for 1 week, to maybe throw one of these guys into your lineup at the matchup and see what shakes out. But it's definitely not an exciting backfield to kind of, attach yourself to, because we're talking about the first and second guys weren't good runners. Now we're on the third and fourth guys. So it's very tough.
Yeah, it's not great. The one saving grace, and you mentioned it, is we have the matchup this week. And I think that'll see us through. I'm in a 14-team league where I'm very excited to have Carter as my second back with Jaylen Warren on bye, right? And so you get to that point in these deeper leagues, and we're already there for a lot of teams. But this matchup, if we hit this matchup with Carter, because Carter already called himself the starter. I think that's kind of where we're going, right? I don't know how the coaching staff felt about that, but if he's able to get 15 carries in this matchup, that the Cardinals should be able to win this game and be in good game script, maybe that hits. But I think that's really, really what we're hoping for. The other situation, I do think, even though it's not going to be for as long, hopefully it's only for 1 week for those who love Bucky Irving the way that I love Bucky Irving. But this other situation I think is interesting, even though it's not as good of a matchup, right? We're here with the Seahawks, because I think very quietly, Rachaad White's actually been pretty good as a runner this year. And I know people are wish casting Sean Tucker to come in and take on more early down work, and maybe that happens. But Rachaad White, no matter what happened earlier in his career, this year's actually been pretty good on the runner, even on early downs, which, I know that, he's in a different position as Irving and all of that. And so you're saying, well, he's coming in more advantageous situations. But even if you limit it to early downs, he's got 4.8 yards per carry, a 15% explosive run rate, which is just not something we've seen from Rachaad White. And so I'm very interested in getting Rachaad White at an extended run out and what that turns into from a fantasy perspective, even in not a great matchup. And especially because while the Seahawks aren't a great matchup, they have given up receiving production to back. So I am very, very interested in Rachaad White this week.
And we saw last year in week 14 when Bucky Irving left the game early. He only played 10 snaps in week 14. And Rachaad White out-touched Sean Tucker 19-3 in that game the rest of the way. Sean Tucker's only played 2 snaps all season. I know he will be involved, right? He climbs the pecking order, but I still would expect Rachaad White to slide in ahead of him and kind of be the lead back in this backfield this week. And like you said, the matchup's not good from a running perspective. They're still missing 2 offensive linemen, but Seattle has been kind of bludgeoned by receivers or running backs in the receiving game out of the backfield. They've actually had the most receiving points to running backs, and Baker Mayfield is targeted as running backs 21% of the time. Since these offensive line injuries have happened, they've actually focused more on the quick game and getting the screen game involved too. So that's where Rachaad White can contribute in an unflattering matchup on paper. But if you're in a full PPR format or, playing on DraftKings at his price, he's going to be on the board, even in a tougher rushing matchup.
I am interested in kind of how popular he is. I wonder how much people talk themselves into Sean Tucker, or obviously there are cheaper options now because of the injuries.
It's another week too where you just don't have to pay for a lot because there's no Puka or CMC, which has kind of been the go-to salary allocation for expensive players. So they're not on the main slate this week. So you kind of have a lot of money, because we talked about some of these receiver injuries. It's still, we're not in a position where you even have to force these pay down receivers either.
Yeah, there's a lot of there are a lot of ways to go from a lineup building, situation. And if people see whatever the matchup number says on DraftKings, I don't even know what it says for the Seahawks next to White, and we have questions about what the role actually is. I want will Michael Carter be more popular than Rashad White? I probably not, but I do think
No.
I think it's an interesting. I don't know. I just think it's interesting our view of what Rashad White is versus what he has actually been this year. And so I'm going to be very interested in Rashad White from a DFS perspective this week. All right, let's move on. Let's do agree or disagree. But before we do that, let's bring in Warren Sharp. Warren Sharp's going to talk about our Sharp Football Prize Pick lineup for Week 5.
It's time for us to build this week's PrizePicks lineup and turn $100 into $600. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports with their easy-to-use app. And now you can play $5 and get $50 instantly in lineups when you use code Warren after you download their app. All right, we're back, and you guys are looking forward to this a ton. I know, and here's why. The first time we did this, we turned $100 into $600 by winning our lineup. The second time we did this, we turned $100 into $600 by winning our lineup. We've done it 2 weeks. We've turned $200 into $1,200. We're back for a third week looking to do the same thing, playing with massive house money. Don't forget PrizePicks. You can follow this over there. Go download the app. Use the link below, and you can make sure that you get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup, first of all, as a bonus to you. And second of all, it's available in 40 states, including California and Texas. So don't delay. Great opportunity. And work with us here as we're looking to turn another $100 lineup into $600. First up, we're going to go with 3 players. The first one is Jordan Mason, less than 14.5 for his longest rush. Okay. Why do I like this one? Well, first and foremost, he's gone up against a couple of bad run defenses. He went up against the Cincinnati Bengals. He rushed for a long of 24 yards. He went up against the Chicago Bears. He rushed for a long of 19 yards. However, when he played the Atlanta Falcons, he didn't come close to this. His longest rush was 8 yards. When he played the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, he didn't come close to this. His longest was 9 yards. Now we're dealing with a Minnesota Vikings offensive line that is absolutely disheveled. They are completely wrecked with injuries. And he's also going up against a ridiculously good defensive front of the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have faced 83 total rushing attempts. Only 2 of those 83 gained more than 9 yards, and both were to Jahmyr Gibbs. So I don't expect Jahmyr Gibbs to be walking out of the tunnel anytime soon, or that Detroit Lions offensive line. We're talking about a lot of backups on the Minnesota offensive line, and Jordan Mason, we're looking at his less than 14.5 for his longest rush. We're starting there. All right, next up, we're going to the New York Jets versus Dallas Cowboys game, and we're going to start with Breece Hall, and we're going to be looking at his more than 23.5 receiving yards. Now, Breece Hall has hit 30-plus receiving yards in 3 of the 4 games that he's played. The only game that he didn't was against the Buffalo Bills. They have the number one pass defense against running backs in the NFL. Dallas Cowboys, on the other hand, number 29 ranked pass defense, allowing 8.5 yards per target to running backs. In the 4 games, the yardage totals that the Cowboys have surrendered to running backs alone, I'm not talking about receivers, I'm just talking about the running backs. 109 yards to the Packers running backs, 49 yards to the Bears running backs, 46 yards to the Giants running backs, and 24 yards to the Eagles running backs. Those teams don't target their running backs nearly as often as the New York Jets do. I think because of the target rate and because of the poor defense of the Dallas Cowboys against running backs, that Breece Hall will have more than 23.5 receiving yards. We're going to stick in the same game. We're going to go with a quarterback, and his name is Justin Fields. And we're going to be looking at Justin Fields' longest rush, more than 15.5 yards. It's kind of an odd market to be dabbling in, but Justin Fields, in the 3 games that he's played, were against the Steelers, the Bills, and the Dolphins. He had longest runs of 43 yards, 27 yards, and 15 yards in those 3 games. The Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, went up against this Cowboys offense. He had a long of 15. Russell Wilson had a long of 15. And Jordan Love had a long of 25 against this Dallas Cowboys run defense. Now, the only guy who didn't was Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears were up huge and were just passing the ball and sitting in the pocket. They were trying to focus on Caleb Williams passing, not necessarily his rushing. So they didn't really need a whole lot out of the quarterback on the ground. The quarterback on the ground is Justin Fields' whole game. I mean, that's what the Jets need. He leads the NFL with a 13% scramble rate. On top of that, the Cowboys have allowed the 4th worst rushing production to opposing quarterbacks on the ground. And like I just said, we're going to get a quarterback who's going to be running it early and often. He just had a nice long run last week. The prior game, he ran it for 27 yards. So he's gone over this in the past 2 games with ease, 27 and 43. We just need him to hit 16. A lot of these quarterbacks are getting 15 plus. We just need to make sure it doesn't land on 15. We want 16 at least from Fields, but we're going more than 15 and a half rushing yards from Justin Fields. And that's going to do it for our PrizePicks lineup this week. We're 2-0 on these things, turned 200 into $1,200 so far. We're looking to do it for a 3rd straight week. You can see the full card up there. Let's go ahead and try to knock out a 3rd one. Make sure that you download PrizePicks using the link below to turn $50 in lineups, to get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5. Good luck to us.
All right, on to agree or disagree. Another round of agree or disagree. Rich's favorite game that we've ever played. And what I do is I throw out a statement, and Rich either has to agree or disagree with the statement. And by the way, I do have to mention, Rich, how happy I have been at you being game for this game and agreeing or disagreeing. And I'm going to hit you with a tough one here right at the beginning. Ashton Jeanty is a sell high. Agree or disagree?
I absolutely agree with this. Now, obviously, there's nuance. Like you just can't dump a running back, but
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
to get rid of him off your roster. But if you're in a position to use this big game that Ashton Jeanty had last weekend as kind of a jumping off point for gamers to kind of say, like, all right, yes, we're back in. This would be kind of the opportune time to shop around, maybe get like a 2-for-1 or bolster your roster elsewhere. I mean, even in that game, he still only averaged 0.7 yards before contact, which was 22nd in the league. He had the big run, obviously, and he's going to have more big runs this year. I'd absolutely believe that. But the Raiders lost another starting offensive lineman. In fact, their best starting offensive lineman in that game, in Colton Miller, to an ankle injury. He's going to miss several weeks at minimum, is the early estimation. You got 2 luck box touchdowns in the receiving game. You're not going to get those like the rest of the way. Those are a gift. Right now, Ashton Jeanty still the RB40 in team target share. He only has 7 catches on the season. Like you're not going to get those receiving touchdowns every week. And then the remaining schedule is still just a nightmare for the Raiders. So it's really an opportune spot, I think, to use this as a jumping off point to shop him around and see what you get. Obviously, the playoff schedule is bad for the Raiders too. You do get if you can get to the championship round with Ashton Jeanty, it's hot, but you've got to fight through like games at Philadelphia and at Houston where you have no faith in this offense right now, especially the way Geno Smith's playing football the opening month of the season. So I absolutely agree with this one. I think it's time to shop him after this big. And this is an inverse Emari and Hampton situation, because like when Hampton had the big game and Najee got hurt, he was going to take over a full workload in an offense we believe in. Like we still don't believe in the Raiders as an offense. The offensive line's bad. The schedule's bad. I would sell if I could.
I would say the first thing I will say to this, for anybody that wants to get mad at us in the comments. And by the way, if you disagree, go into the comments and tell Rich how stupid he is. I would really enjoy to see those. I'd love seeing those. But before, so Jeanty is very good at football. I think that's pretty clear. This is more of a situational thing. And you mentioned the schedule, and I agree with you if we get further down. But this week they get the Colts, and the Colts are, I believe, 31st in yards for contact allowed on running back runs. And then the week after that, they get the Titans. And that's maybe the best matchup in the league for running backs when you combine the quality of the defense and the game.
Well, are those good matchups for him, or the good matchups for those run defenses?
That's the question, right?
And also the Colts face the second fewest runs in the NFL.
So the Colts could definitely script him out. And if that's what happens in this game, then he's not going to get the catches. Because as you mentioned, we're not getting him involved in the passing game the way we want. Those 2 receiving touchdowns, there's only 2 targets in the game, which again, why is that happening? I don't know. Ashton Jeanty's really good at football. You should probably try to get him the ball. Just like throwing that out there. That's probably a good idea, Chip Kelly. But we'll see what happens there. But I do think we could see some more success, not to this level. That was an amazing game. We're not going to see that. I do think we should see more success over the next 2 weeks. And if that happens, then people start to feel better. The other problem is I have Jeanty in a league you and I are actually in together. And I started shopping around on Tuesday night of like those 2-for-1 trades I can make. I trade my Jeanty and I get the 2. And like I mean, to be fair, that league's got a lot of really sharp people in it, and I kind of feel like I'm not going to offer up like Jeanty for James Cook or whatever. But I do I start to think about like, well, how far down can I actually go from Jeanty and feel good, giving the running back situation as it is right now? At least I know he's going to get touches, and so it was hard for me to find a deal that I actually liked as I was going through it. So it's just a tough situation all around, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's the landscape. So it's league dependent. You got to find someone that actually wants the player that you have, or has something to kind of move around. And that's why I always say, like, when people always talk about like fantasy football trades, like players to target or players to sell, like it's not as binary. And I always tell people in the Sunday chats when they ask me too, it's like, who would you trade for? And I'm like, this is the wrong question to ask. I mean, you need to look at what you have on your roster that's expendable, and then go through the rosters in your league and find out what teams need that. And then that's how you barter, right? Like, then you have to see what that roster has. Like you'll be a way more successful fantasy football trader if you kind of approach things from that angle of like saying, well, who has the thing, who needs the thing that I have surplus of or want to move? And that's how you have to use the starting block, instead of saying like, oh, I'm going to go out and get Ladd McConkey. Like, then let me just see who has Ladd McConkey and try to offer them a trade. Like, you'll be way more successful going the inverse route.
Yeah, and you also have to just know, like, so for instance, I'm in a 2-quarterback league in which I have Dart, Darnold, and Lawrence behind Jalen Hurts. So I'm in a really great position at quarterback. I got to get rid of one of those guys. Obviously, I want to keep Dart over Lawrence and Darnold, but Dart is also coming off that performance, getting the Saints this week, is just more valuable. He's going to be more interesting, even though I don't think the gap between him and Lawrence and Darnold rest of the season is maybe what people think, right? And so I would rather have Dart, but I'm going to try to trade Dart of those quarterbacks because I know I can actually get more back for him. That's kind of where you have to come at it from. And so, yeah, it's not even about like, who do you actually want to let go? I would rather trade Trevor Lawrence. That would be great if someone wants Trevor Lawrence, but it just kind of, you are where you are with your roster, and you have to figure that out. All right, let's do another one here. Woody Marks will be an every week fantasy starter moving forward.
I'd say I would agree, because starter is the phrase that you used. Like him being
I
kind
didn't
of
say running back one. I did not say running back one. I want to be clear.
Him, kind of being in that RB2 plus mold. I mean, if you heard D'Amico Ryans after the game, like I'll tell you someone who had a Woody. It was D'Amico Ryans. He was raving about Woody Marks after the game. His pass pro, like talking about like the things that not even running the football, right? Like he was talking about all the little things. And like when a coach starts bringing up that stuff, like, and then he brings up the phrase like we're excited to see how much he can handle. Like, slow down, D'Amico. Also, the backfield having a Woody and a Chubb. Like, we are very lowbrow on this podcast. Like, we can make all the jokes and innuendos here as well.
We're 40 years old now, Rich. We have to. No, we don't. We never need to grow up. Never need to grow up.
And his receiving profile is what also I think insulates him from the floor, because the offensive line is still not good, right? Yeah. Had a good match last week. Runs a good match this week. We know the offensive line is still going to be an issue, but his receiving profile coming out of college was the best in this draft class. So if they start incorporating as a pass catcher, he can get some more work. His touches have done nothing but go up. His snap shares done nothing but go up. So yeah, I think he's going to be like that RB2 plus mold. It was good. Listen, these last 2 weeks have been good for rookie running backs. I know everyone was panicking the opening month. We're starting to move downhill a little bit with some of these guys. Sorry, Travion Henderson owners.
Yeah, that one didn't go as well last week. But like, here's the most interesting thing from that game to me. And you mentioned all the stuff and D'Amico Ryans and all of that. And when I was trying to sell, I tried to sell Woody Marks in the waiver column, not this past week, but the week before, like before this big game hit. And he didn't get added in as many leagues as I thought he would. I didn't think I was even making I thought that was a very normie thing to say. Hey, you should probably go pick up Woody Marks. And he was still available in like 65% of leagues this week, which was a little bit surprising to me. But when I was selling Woody Marks, I was thinking of him as the passing down complement. We're going to get more of him on early downs. We'll get him in passing downs. We don't think this offense is very good. This team does not appear to be very good, even though their defense is. Can we get him in negative game script, catching a lot of passes, maybe even being like more of like a PPR scam kind of situation? And then we come into this game that we could say they dominated because they pulled away in the fourth, but they didn't. But it was still a positive game script, at least a neutral game script the whole way through. And he still did this. And that to me that's a great sign that he was getting that work on early downs in a neutral game script over Nick Chubb. That's the thing to me that I'm like, oh, this is real. And then, like you said, the coaches came out. This feels very real. We still have concerns about the offense. We still have concerns about the offensive line, but at least we're getting a guy. This is different than Chubb because we think Marks can also get catches whenever we get into those negative game scripts. And so, yeah, we're in a good spot here with Woody Marks. Finally, and I'm just going to run back the same question for a different player. Malik Washington will be an every week fantasy starter.
Oh, absolutely not. Big time disagree. And I hope so for some of these best ball leagues and stuff. But
yeah,
this is probably like a Josh Downs situation. I mean, Malik Washington is not a factor in the run game, so he's not going to play in 1 to 2 wide receiver sets. And the Miami Dolphins don't run. They are playing little more 11 personnel because of him this year. They're up to like a 54%, like 11 personnel rate. I think it's 53%. But Nick Westbrook-Akine is going to be in all those 1 to 2 wide receiver set stuff on a team that wants to run the football, like out of those sets. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see like the full route participation for Malik Washington. I think he's still going to be probably like in like the 60 to 75% range, given the game scripts. So it brings me a lot of remorse to disagree with that one, but I do think it's a similar situation that like we talked about like Adonai Mitchell last week and Josh Downs. Like just because a guy's out doesn't mean that he's going to bump into that role. But I am hoping that for some best ball bags that we can get some big games from Malik Washington moving forward.
Yeah, I think that it's really important just to remember that aspect of it. It's not a like for like replacement, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not getting Tyreek Hill, and Westbrook-Akine is going to make a lot of people very angry in terms of like how much he played. He played 80% of the dropbacks without Hill on the field on Monday night. Washington ran a route only 53.3% of those dropbacks, and actually so far for this season, with Hill off the field but Jalen Waddle on the field, we have Washington's only been in a route on 57.1% of those dropbacks. And so we've seen how he's been used. Can that change now that Hill is out? Could they get him more involved? I think so. I do think it'll be higher than that kind of like 55% range, but I do worry he's going to be just that third option that's not playing. And then the other problem of that is, okay, well, you get Westbrook-Akine, and he scored a lot of touchdowns last year, obviously. Like we remember that. I remember on this podcast every week going, I don't know, like maybe he'll score a touchdown again. I have no idea what to do with this guy. But, he was on the field on Monday night, resulted in just one target. Has been targeted on 14% of his routes thus far in his career. It's just not an exciting situation. And then you look at their matchup this week, and this is the other aspect of this, and you go, well, they're playing the Panthers. I mean, that's got to be great news. The Panthers have quietly been playing really good pass defense. They're 4th in yards per target allowed to wide receivers. They are 20th in yards to the slot. So that's, good for Malik Washington, yards per target to the slot. But it's not like the Panthers have been a pass defense we've targeted more as much as they've been a run defense. So you put it all together and you're like, I wanted to be really excited about this because we drafted a lot of Malik Washington in best ball. This was kind of the upside outcome that Hill would be traded or, would be, not get hurt. We never hoping for get hurt, but be traded maybe. And so like, this was like, all right, so we're here now. And then you're like, I just don't know. It's just a tough situation.
Yeah, that same league that you brought up about you having Ashton Jeanty. I think in that league, my first round pick was Malik Neighbors. My third round pick was Tyreek Hill. So
how's that going, Chief?
Seems pretty good. Pretty good week. Pretty good week.
Things going great. We're really killing it. And then I actually am. My team's not bad in that league. H8. I have H8 in that league. We're just let's do an entire podcast exclusively about that league and about how JJ.
I'm very curious too. I meant to ask you, not the sidebar, because we're doing this podcast, not to derail us, but a couple of those DraftKings teams we drafted feel like they're doing pretty well because we took Puka Nacua on quite a few of them.
Yeah, we're not doing bad. I wouldn't say that we're killing it yet, but obviously we're early in the season. But I think maybe 3 of them are advancing, and what we did 8 of them. So that's a pretty good rate. My underdog teams not as good, but I keep telling myself it's early in the season. We've got room to grow. We've got room to grow. So we'll be fine. All right, let's talk about some of these game previews. Before we do that, though, I do want to remind you that you can get a player-by-player preview of every single game this week from Rich Rebar. We call them the worksheets. They're available at sharpfootballanalysis.com. It's part of our fantasy package. You can also get access to those, however, using our deal this week. Go to sharp.football. You'll see a link for the deal where you can get all of our week 5 recommendations and our fantasy package for just $5 for this week. Go to sharp.football. Check that out. Also, wherever you're listening to us, subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this in a podcast player, please subscribe, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us. We appreciate the support. All right, let's get on the game previews. Normally, I don't have a very tough time. We normally talk about 2 or 3 games, and so it's easy enough to go and find 2 or 3 games that I'm really interested in talking about. That was not the case this week. I'll be honest with you. There were a lot of games I wasn't so excited about, but there are still enough here. And the first I think is very interesting is our Sunday night game, New England in Buffalo. Buffalo is a 7.5 or 8-point favorite some places, so maybe that doesn't scream exciting, but the total is 49.5. And what I really liked as you were talking about Drake Maye and the worksheet was how you mentioned we're going to either find out if this passing game is real or if this Bills pass defense. Like, we're in a really interesting situation where both of these teams have not really been tested. They've been doing good, but they haven't really been tested. And we might find out something about, one or both of these units this Sunday night.
Yeah, and this is what we talked about last week. Still trying to provide context to a lot of like these early season stats. I do see a lot of people still using a lot of defensive stats, and without context of like opponents and like who team. Because I always said, like, my adage is, even my decade plus of doing this, is a lot of defensive stats are actually opposing offensive stats, not truly defensive stats. And we kind of have that with the Bills a little bit right now. Outside of, week 1, they have since faced Justin Fields, Tua Tagovailoa, and Spencer Rattler. So like a lot of their defensive metrics have really stabilized from week 1, and they actually look really good and look awesome against the pass. Well, inversely, the Patriots, like from an EPA stance, like a success rate stance, like Drake Maye has been absolutely hot. Right? In the opening month, the Patriots have faced the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Steelers, bludgeon defense, and the Carolina Panthers, like all teams that we would consider very low rate defenses outside the Steelers, but like they had a plethora of injuries, too, as well. So we're going to find out some truths, right? I would love this to be like the coming out party for Drake Maye, right? I was high on Drake Maye, drafted him a lot. I want him to be good in real life because we just need more good quarterbacks in the NFL. We would love to see the Bills actually have some divisional competition too. So I'm excited about this game from like a real football stance. I'm excited about from like a Drake Maye stance. And I'm excited to find out kind of like the realistic, kind of like what truths we can find out, especially too for like the Bills run defense has been garbage. Right? Like, it's been trash. And this Patriots run game has been kind of mediocre, and they are just playing this nightmare fuel 3-man committee, and we would want to exploit the Bills in that regard, but can we even do that? Like, so there's a lot of interesting notes in this game that are really kind of fun to kind of go through.
I wasn't actually going to bring up the backfield because it just brings me pain. And it's so, like, I feel bad because we were such big Antonio Gibson fans at one point in our lives. At least I was in the Washington days, and now I just want him to disappear. And so, like, I feel bad about it. What I actually want? I want Antonio Gibson to be traded to the Cardinals. That is my absolute dream outcome. That would be a wonderful outcome for that to happen. But yeah, it is. It's just like we don't know what to do. We talked last week about was what we saw from those 2 running backs an opportunity for Henderson to get that extended usage. And he kind of did actually get some extended usage in that game, but it just hasn't hit. We haven't seen the big plays from him. It's been a very, very disappointing kind of run out. The one guy you were talking about, all the interesting angles here. The one guy you didn't mention on the Patriots offense is Stefon Diggs. And we're just in pure narrative street here. Last week, we finally see the usage expand. Were they doing that because we're 1 week before the Bills, right? Like we're here with Stefon Diggs. Like, what are you doing with him this week?
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to get the usage, like if that was the kind of the tipping point of, hey, Stefon Diggs is healthy enough, we're going to let him get full work, because, up until that point, he was kind of running around on sub 70% of the dropbacks. He's actually below 60% in 2 of the opening 3 games. And then last week, through 3 quarters, because that game was a blowout, he was on the field for right around 90% of the dropbacks. So full go. And it kind of, the timetable tracks, right? Because he was a little bit ahead of schedule regardless from like a typical ACL injury. And then you kind of give this extra 3 weeks from when the season started. And like, it all makes sense. Like a month into the year now, we can let him play. So if he's going to be on the field with Drake Maye playing as well as he did the opening month, again, caveat opponents, but that puts him back into like the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 borderline, and then upside for more, depending how good Maye is against good defenses. He also moved around. He played 56% of his snaps outside, 45% in the slot. So we like to see that usage of him be able to kind of be deployed, going back to Buffalo. I think he actually faced the Bills in one of the games last year. Did he not? With the Texans before he got hurt. I think he actually scored against them. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I have that wrong. But I think he did face them. But I might be wrong about that. But yeah, you like that because the Patriots up until this point were also running a nightmare fuel rotation at wide receiver. Matt Collins was rotating in. We even saw Kyle Williams play a little bit last week. So like all these guys, like Demario Douglas has been kind of the guy that's just trending just completely south. So if Demario Douglas looks like a pretty clear drop even in your deeper leagues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So but Matt Collins is playing, and that would track because like he's active in the run game. He actually has 2 touchdowns. That's kind of a bummer because he's like a third tight end now with these guys in the red zone. But yeah, Stefon Diggs now looks like we're warming up to him kind of being that wide receiver 2+.
You were right. He went 6 for 82 against the Bills last year in a game the Texans won. So there you go. Big. Mm-hmm. So maybe we're off the hashtag narrative street. Maybe he's already gotten his revenge.
Oh, no, vengeance never dies.
Something about Stefon Diggs suggests to me that he will be after revenge for the rest of time. So yeah, we're still on our narrative street. One more here is I think James Cook. It's another one of those situations like you mentioned with the New England pass game. With James Cook, not as much for him, but this Patriots run defense has actually been pretty good. But you know. How much has it been tested? They did bring in a lot that that suggested to us that it would be good. It wasn't actually that bad last year, if I'm remembering correctly. So maybe some of that is real, but obviously we're getting this James Cook workload, the workload we were hoping to see for him, after getting that contract. We're getting it now. So like, you're not moving off of James Cook. I guess the question is just more from like a DFS perspective. What's the ceiling here for him this week?
Yeah, and it's still, I think, just really high because of the offensive environment. And even though the matchup looks tougher on paper, again, we will find truths because the Patriots have faced, 3 opponents that have really struggled to run the football outside of their matchup against the Patriots. But like you said, too, like they spent a lot of money on, shoring up that front 7. Obviously they got Christian Barmore back, from the blood clot injury, but, they throw the bag at Milton Williams. They get Kevon Chase on. They get Robert Spillane. Like they put effort into making this run defense better too, and that has paid off. They're at least not letting the opponents that were bad run on them. Like this is what you're supposed to do, right? If you have a good matchup, take advantage of it. Yeah. But then James Cook, like the usage for him, and this is the thing that I regret the most about the James Cook offseason experience. Like I don't mind like their aggression stuff because he scored a lot of touchdowns over expectation, but it was paired with like limited usage. And that's like always a red flag. I kick myself for saying like, all right, well, if the Bills do give James Cook the bag, like, won't they just use him more? Yeah. That's what's happened. Like it
was so easy. It was so right in front of us and we just missed it. And we deserve all of the criticism for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We just deserve the criticism for it because we just missed it. It's such an obvious, easy. And like, I wonder if it's like one of those things we don't want to get caught into storylines and they paid this guy kind of situations, but they paid this guy is exactly what I was doing with Jaylen Warren after he got his extension. Why wouldn't I do this with James Cook?
With James Cook. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Because from a profile perspective, like James Cook is always the kind of guy you wanted. Like he looks like Aaron Jones, right? Like he's like that tweener profile, great receiver, creates chunk gains, is explosive, and he had this offensive attachment to an offense that we believe still is a top 5 offense in terms of creating scoring opportunities. So I mean, he already has 18 or more touches in all 4 games. Last 2 weeks, 87%, 92% of the backfield touches. Last year, he cleared 15 touches 4 times total. Like the route participation's up, the snap rate is way up. So it's just, I think if we were drafting right now, if like we reshuffled and drafted, I think James Cook would be pick 105, 106 maybe. And like,
mid first round.
Like
especially
absolutely.
with the Bucky Irving injury and how he's been. We messed it up. We need a new graphic. we're off.
No, I mean, I apologize. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're complete mea culpa on James Cook. All right, let's move on to talk about the Commanders at the Chargers. Chargers 2.5 point favorites, 48 total. This is a absolutely great matchup for Justin Herbert if he doesn't get pressured. But I think we have to have real concerns about that, given what we see from Washington this year, which they have been getting a little bit of pressure, but also just this offensive line situation is an absolute mess.
It's a disaster, and it's an epidemic across the NFL. Like, we've talked about a lot of these offensive lines, and it just feels like we lose a key offensive lineman every week, and like sometimes multiple of them. Like, we're lucky if it's just one. And these last 2 weeks, it's been a significant problem, especially for a team that wants to throw the football as much as the Chargers still want to. The last 2 weeks, he's been pressured on 49% of his dropbacks and 46% of so basically just say half of his dropbacks he's been pressured on the last 2 weeks. And under pressure these past 2 weeks, Justin Herbert, 14 of 38 passing. That's a 36.8% completion rate, 4 yards per pass attempt, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. It's been a problem for his fantasy, production too. Like, he hasn't been a QB1 since week 1 in fantasy football. And you still see when he's kept clean, it's still the metrics are good. You lose Joe Alt now. Hopefully we get Mekhi Becton back. I haven't seen, if he opened.
He was limited on Wednesday. And so
at least
coming back from a concussion, that's probably means he's going to play.
Yeah. Fingers crossed we get him back. But now you're down both tackles. Remember, they started the year without Rashawn Slater. Washington has been boom or bust as a defense dependent on their pressure, right? Like, they're 9th in the league in pressure rate. And then when they have gotten pressure on the opposing quarterback, they only allow 5.9 yards per pass. They haven't allowed a touchdown pass yet when they've pressured the opposing quarterback. So when Washington has not gotten pressure on the quarterback, because the front seven's good and then the secondary, big time question mark. And they have injuries too on the back end. But when they haven't gotten pressure on the quarterback, they've allowed 10.3 yards per pass attempt. That's ahead of only the Dallas Cowboys. They've also allowed a 9.2% touchdown rate when they haven't got pressure. That's 29th in the league. In these past 3 weeks, Jordan Love, Geno Smith was garbage time, but they fantasy points, we don't give them back. And Michael Penix, all good against this Commanders defense. So we do need to keep Justin Herbert clean in this game. But it's a very volatile situation given the nature of the Chargers still wanting to throw the football as much as they have this opening month of the season.
What about, I guess we have to talk about Ladd McConkey. I've kind of Ladd McConkey'd out after this month. Like,
yeah. There's a few of those players, right? Like, after a month, you're just like, all right, yeah.
I don't know. He's still getting enough targets to be fine from like a usage perspective in like his percentage of targets in the offense. This is, I think, where we lose a little bit. It makes a lot of sense to talk about target share and target per route and all of that stuff. But ultimately, raw targets still matter as well. And like his raw targets aren't actually, they don't just still matter. They matter the most, right? That's what matters the most. When we're talking about those other rates, we're talking about projectable, what are we doing projecting forward? His raw targets have actually been fine, I would say, for what we would want from McConkey. It's not hitting for him. And now we have these questions. The Chargers have been the most pass-heavy offense in terms of expectations in the league. They and the Chiefs are like 1 and 2 right in there. Now we have these injuries to the offensive line. We have these issues that Herbert has been getting, pressured. Does that pull back? And then if that pulls back, we're obviously going to get some raw target pullback from Ladd McConkey because of, just that his numbers per route, per team target share, not what we want them to be. Like, what happens then? Can it actually still get worse for McConkey? That's kind of where I am. And I just it makes me sad to talk about it because I think he's really good. And this is just kind of where we are.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit last week. I still think he's a bet on talent player. Like, it's not going to go this poorly. If you're taking the glass half full approach, you're just saying like, he's on the field. He's on the field for 94% of dropbacks on a offensive attachment that we still kind of, believe in, even though they have some issues kind of cropping up. He's second in the NFL in pass routes run. But we said like the pullback was 2 things last week, and it's still things that are true and they keep mounting. 1, Quentin Johnston is real. Like, I've been here like the whole month. Like, let's believe.
I want to take a victory lap on Christian Johnson because I made a really almost impassioned plea. Like, what are we doing? This price doesn't make sense in one of our DraftKings drafts. Like, I was like, this doesn't make sense. This guy got better in year 2. He's a former first-round pick. What are we doing? But in that same draft, I pushed for us to draft Keandre Lambert-Smith. In fact, I clicked the button. So I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can victory lap it. Yeah. But like, the Quentin Johnson thing, he's a former first-round pick who got better as a sophomore. It's another one of those things.
And he's like an archetypical profile of like, absolutely, what if that player like of that archetype is succeeding, teams use that player. Like,
A
So
player that can create after the catch and create big plays. Teams like that. That's wild.
shocking.
Yeah,
And then the other thing that we harped on last week too is like still the ceiling stuff for McConkey is potentially limited because of the red zone and end zone usage, right? Like, I mean, he has 1 red zone target. The team has 18 of those, and he has 0 end zone targets. And like this was a problem last year as well. Like he was 44th in red zone expected points as a rookie. And then you add Keenan Allen to the mix, a guy who has clear rapport with Herbert, right? Because you see Keenan Allen stuff in the metrics, like where he gets his targets. 3rd down, red zone, end zone. That's like where he's getting, that's where the Keenan Allen thing has lived. And that's because Herbert, like he's a security blanket for Herbert. So yeah, those are the roadblocks still for McConkey. And we were worried about the target stuff. Because remember, McConkey wasn't elite, like from a target share perspective. He was an elite last year either as a rookie. So you add a guy to the mix, you don't get the red zone on target. So I still think from a bet on talent perspective, he's too good to run this badly, but I still think there are limitations on what we're still going to see where we rebound to.
Yeah, and I want to say it again because I haven't really heard it be talked about, but this is what's happening when they're throwing at a league high rate. What happens if that doesn't continue and they get worried and Hampton turns good and they get worried about the offensive line and the defense is good enough? It's just that's a big concern. But
they're also throwing to Hampton these past 2 weeks with the pressures. The pressures have gotten more targets to the running backs because the ball's coming out.
Yeah, which is obviously a problem for we want those to go to McConkey, right? And so that's a problem for sure. Let's talk about the Washington side here. Any concern about Jayden Daniels? He's going to play this week. I mean, he was full on Wednesday. He's playing this week. But any concern about him coming back from that injury?
Mild. If you've read my work over like the last decade plus, I'm always very hesitant on quarterbacks that come back from multi-week injuries. Like quarterback's a very rhythm position. It's kind of hard to come back in cold and kind of hit the ground running. So I do always kind of dock players for like a multi-week absence. Also, the removal of Terry McLaurin from this offense is pretty significant because they have no one that can win downfield. Like he was their only guy. Like he was the only big play guy that they have. The rest of this is built around all players that get targets near the line of scrimmage. Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, Luke McCaffrey now stepping into a role. Because like Chris Moore filled in for Luke McCaffrey or Terry McLaurin last week. I'm sorry. And like Chris Moore just doesn't earn targets. Like he can be out there and run around, but like he's never been a target earner in his career. So the removal of Terry McLaurin is actually very significant for the upside of this offense and the generation of big plays in this offense. Like this is the team that has to matriculate to score points. It's a good defensive matchup for the chart. Like this is a tough defensive matchup, I should say. So we're not expecting ceiling run out. The Chargers have a lot of rushing yards, the quarterbacks, because they play so much zone. So maybe that's a way Daniels can get, his there for fantasy football. But he was solid his first 2 games, not electric. I think he's more of like a floor-based QB1 and not like a ceiling QB1. Although he's that type of talent, he could get there. But everyone's playing him that had him this week. It'd just be more from a DFS perspective, like how you're handling the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. You said Chris Moore, and I was like, didn't he go on IR? And no, that was David Moore from Carolina, which I've never, I guess I've never questioned if they're related or not. It never really occurred to me that they're different people, to be honest with you.
I just want to know about this game, how much I love the tug of war that the people don't get to see between us, because I refuse to write Bill Krosky merit in anything. And you change it every time. So it's like a great tug of war between us here. Like how much, when was the point where you will cave and not change it?
Never. We will continue. You will have to go in after it's published and change it back to Ja'Cory. That's the only way.
Which I'm not doing either. So
yeah, well, we're fine. You mentioned the injuries, like McLaurin's not playing this week, but like Deebo was a DNP on Wednesday. Our one true king Noah Brown still a DNP on Wednesday. Like it could get worse from a receiver perspective. I have not read, again, we record this on Thursday morning. I have not read any reporting on Deebo Samuel. This certainly could just be a rest day for, a veteran guy, but it is just like, these injuries continue to build. And like I could say, it could be a rest day. Zach Ertz also didn't practice on Wednesday, but that was listed as a rest. The Deebo one was listed as a heel. And so we'll see. That could be another concern as we move through here. But talking about old Bill, as we're going to call him, Bill Krosky Merritt. Like, what are we doing with this Washington backfield? It seems very clear that Bill Krosky Merritt is the best back that they have. At some point in the season, they will play him more. Like, I definitely think that's the case. Right now, that's not happening. Right now, we're getting a lot of Chris Rodriguez. We're not getting as much McNichols, right? But like, this is still a 3-headed backfield, and we can't do anything with him, right? That's kind of where we are.
Yeah, you can't really play him. I would say this would be a guy that I think you would tack on to some trades, right? Like, some gamers are probably frustrated with him because he's not playable right now. But like you said, I think big picture, we're going to see his workload extend. I mean, he's very clearly like the most efficient running back they have. I mean, of all running backs in the NFL that have 25 or more carries, he has the highest success rate in the league. He has the highest rate of runs that go for a first down or touchdown. He's 10th in rate of explosive runs that go for 10 or more yards. And he's 13th in stuff rate, runs that fail to gain yardage. So, I mean, his still competition is just Chris Rodriguez and Jerry McNichols. Now, Chris Rodriguez did have a nice little run last week too, so I want to give Chris Rodriguez a little shout for the explosive run he created. But Jerry McNichols hasn't gotten touches in either game. He just had that huge play 2 weeks ago. But in both games, like, Jerry McNichols has not gotten touches. He's just out there playing. It's very clear they just don't trust Krosky Merritt like as like the full, like, in pass protection stuff. He's been very bad in pass protection. That's like the one bugaboo. So maybe it never runs out because of that. But he is by far their best runner. But you can't play these guys. These 3-headed backfields where we have a couple of them that have manifested, very frustrating. Like this Patriots backfield, this Commanders backfield, and don't forget that this backfield doesn't just come with these two guys. It comes with Jayden Daniels and it comes with Deebo Samuel. Because Deebo Samuel's rush attempts have now gone up these past 2 weeks since the Eckler injury as well.
Yeah. Well, you didn't mention the other one though, the one that we're hoping for the best for another rookie, and that is the Kansas City backfield. So let's talk about that game real quick. The Chiefs at the Jaguars. Chiefs -3.5, 46.5 point total. And I guess there are two things in this one. We'll get to the backfield in a second. The first thing I want to talk about is we were dead wrong on this podcast last week when we both said we did not think that the Chiefs were going to have an explosive enough offensive output to script Derrick Henry out of the game. We were wrong. Big swing and a miss by us. But I guess the question is, was that more Baltimore's defense that just has no healthy players left anymore? Or has the Chiefs passing game turned a corner with Xavier Worthy back? They're going to get Rashee Rice back relatively soon. We will see Rashee Rice back. Has this Chiefs passing offense turned a corner, or was that just, everybody's going to get there against the Ravens?
Well, that's again, the truth we'll find out, this week. I mean, because the Ravens, just the number of injuries that they continue to have on defense and offense. Like, if it wasn't for the 49ers, like, they'd be the most cursed team to start the year.
I saw a tweet that somebody had asked the Etsy witches to curse the Ravens, and it's possible that has been effective because that that injury record, like the 49ers and them are like going neck for neck. Like, what are we doing here? How are this many of your players hurt? It's wild.
But I think what we were talking about with the Chiefs last week, though, is we didn't know how to handle the first game of Worthy coming back, because we just didn't know, like, was he going to play 20% of the snaps, 50% of snaps? Was he just going to be as a decoy? Like, we kind of just didn't know what was going to happen with him. And there was like no restriction. Like, they were giving him handoffs. Like, even in like when the game was in hand, like, they were running him. He took some hits. There was no, like, you didn't see him wince. You didn't see him hold his shoulder at all. Like, maybe the Toradol was flowing. I don't know. But like, regardless, like, Worthy being as explosive, and he looked explosive. Like, him just adding that component to this offense was like a major jolt. Now, again, let's see it against the defense that's actually been playing relatively well in the Jaguars. I do think the Jaguars are going to come back to the pack defensively a little bit just because of the rate of turnovers they're living on. But I do think Anthony Campanelli's done a really good job, especially up front. Like, they're doing a lot of really cool things with the defensive line and creating a lot of havoc and like a lot of quick pressures. That is a lot tougher to do against a guy like Patrick Mahomes. But the insertion of a healthy Xavier Worthy, I do think, is a major component that, like, we didn't stock it because we just didn't know last week. We just didn't really know what he was going to play, his role was going to be. I will say it coming at the expense of Tyquan Thornton, I don't know if I agree with.
It broke my heart.
It
absolutely broke my heart. Yeah.
Tyquan took the major hit out of the receivers. And Marquise Brown did, I know, because they all got touchdowns still. Like all the guys still got touchdowns. But yeah, all those guys took a hit in the rotation, but Tyquan took the biggest hit. And I think Tyquan was playing really good football. And I think, man, I still think the best three when it's all said and done, when Rashee Rice comes back, would be Tyquan, as we talked about, in like that Justin Watson role, Worthy in that hybrid role, like being able to play outside and move into the slot, and then Rashee Rice just eating up all the stuff in the middle of the field. I think that's the best three the Chiefs can put on the field. But yeah, so pour one out for Tyquan.
Yeah, it was it hurt my soul. He still got that touchdown, one more touchdown before he returns to the waiver wire everywhere. Because like you said, Rice is going to come back at some point. And when that happens, then, the dream is definitely dead. To that,
I think you should feel bullish about Mahomes, though. I think kind of the short-term stuff. Like maybe this week he's still more of like a floor-based QB1. But I think the way Worthy played, and then when you get Rashee Rice back, I think this thing, because the offensive line is playing pretty decent in pass protection, so
yeah, and they can't run.
I think that would be bullish. Yeah,
So,
and they can't run.
Yeah, they're gonna have to throw. Like when we're talking about that pass rate over expected, and wondering if the Chargers were going to, if their neutral drop back rate comes back to earth somewhat because their offensive line concerns. I do not have that concern about the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to keep throwing because they have to keep throwing because, they can't run. And, the one thing you could do if you're going to be a throwing offense, you're going to lean more into throw, is you could just play Rashard Smith more, which we got news this week or quotes this week that we're going to see that. I am still hesitant to say that Rashad Smith is somebody you need to go add in like a 10-team league, because I just think we're still going to see Hunt and Pacheco. We're going to see those veteran guys that they trust, and they're going to get carries on early downs, and Smith isn't going to get those. And can he get touchdowns over Hunt? Probably not. And so you put all that together, and it's probably still not going to work out. But I do think we will see more Rashad Smith moving forward, which ultimately is a good thing for this offense, especially from like a creative, explosive plays perspective.
I think your just hope is he can become like Jerick McKinnon, right? Like that's the kind of the path. I will say that don't be fooled by the Isaiah Pacheco touchdown. He is still a guy you can completely move on from. Like I don't think that there's like again, he lost more share of the backfield touches. We've got a third guy now involved. And let's say Rashard Smith becomes the McKinnon. We already have like the goal line guy and Hunt. Like where does Pacheco fit in? Like it's just completely like between the 20s stuff that's just runs and like maybe some a couple design stuff that works out. So I would say just don't think that because he got that touchdown last week that Pacheco's back.
Yeah, I said on the Monday podcast with Freeman, I said, if you can sell Pacheco's name value and his attachment in that offense and the fact that he got a touchdown last week, if you can use that to sell him for anything, I think you should do it. That's the point we're at in this backfield with him. We also have another Ladd McConkey type player in this with Brian Thomas Jr. I guess I'm not going to ask you to talk. I guess with Brian Thomas Jr., he's still getting targets, right? And so we have to hope that it's going to work out. Although you did in the worksheet raise some concerns about this wrist injury, and maybe if this is the type of injury where it just comes out, hey, this guy's out for the rest of the season randomly, kind of that kind of injury, which, I don't want that at all. So please stop putting that into the air, because I would not be excited if that happened.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I have no idea what's really going on in him health wise. There's clearly something going on with him.
Something is wrong. Yeah.
Like we had to play 2 weeks ago where he's not like, not like he's like holding his wrist up. Last week he was getting his wrist looked at. The one thing about him, like you said, that's different between like a Ladd McConkey is that like the rest of the depth chart is still really bad. And like they're not changing anything with Travis Hunter. So like he has like no target threats. So the targets have still been there kind of from a target share perspective every week. It's just, you're kind of worried about like, is the injury like an actual thing? But the matchup's not good this week. You don't feel good about guys like going as the Chiefs. Like Spags always takes away like the primary target usually in the offense. Like the last 3 weeks, AJ Brown, Malik Neighbors, Zay Flowers got some garbage time run out with Cooper Rush last week, but none of those guys have really performed. It doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good at all. Like, and it's crazy because like the Jaguars have won some games too playing this way. So I still do want to see like when they have to like get put in like some jailbreak game script, what happens to Brian Thomas, but like, are we going to see as many of those games as we thought, kind of moving forward, as they open the season. So he's a guy I think that's just more of a tweener. I don't think we're going to see like the full run, because the other part of this component is Trevor Lawrence is still bad. Like it turns out Trevor Lawrence still really like we haven't seen Liam Cohen coax out the best of him this opening month of the season. The off target rate stuff is still bad. If you pressure him, it's bad. Yeah, I don't feel good about Brian Thomas Jr. really right now at all. It gives me no warm feelings.
Plug your ears, Jaguars fans. But what if this is the best of Trevor Lawrence? Like, what if that's what we're looking at here? Because I mean, how many? It's been this way for a little while now, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe this is the best, and if that's the case, it's not. It's not going to be great.
What if you
But
don't get 3 takeaways every game?
yeah, it's not. It's not ideal. It's not ideal, but I'm rooting for you, Jaguars. I always root for the Jaguars. I'm hoping for the best. You did write terrible things about Parker Washington in the worksheet, though, and so we are going to have to fight outside of Bucky's about that later. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that at some point in the
What
future.
is the fighting outside Bucky's thing? Because you've dropped this. Is it like safe? Is that like a no jurisdiction zone? Like, are you allowed to just fight at Bucky's? Like,
I feel like Bucky's is a Bucky's parking lot is like the prime fight location. Like if we were still making, what was that video game with the rappers fighting, Def Jam or whatever?
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
I figured if we were doing that game again, one of the sets would be a Bucky's parking lot.
I just assumed because
that
Bucky's has everything that like it was like complete like no like it was like no loss. Like it was like like it was just fine. Like you're allowed to do whatever you want. Like you can eat a pulled pork sandwich at 7 a.m. at Bucky's. Like
oh, you're talking to me. It is really weird, just as an aside. So my family's been stopping at the original Bucky's since I was a child, right? Because we would drive down I-10 from Houston to the hill country of Texas, as we call it the hill country. I don't even know if they're classified as hills, but they're higher than what the coastal plains I grew up in. And we would always stop at Bucky's every time. And for now it to become not just like a Texas brand, like a national brand, has been very, very odd for me. But hey, I'm happy for them. I hope it all works out, and hope you and I get to meet one day in a Bucky's parking lot to fight about Parker Washington. Remember, if you want a preview of every game, those are all available at sharpfootballanalysis.com. So make sure you go and check those out. Part of our fantasy package. Again, you get everything, fantasy package and our betting recommendations this week for just $5. Go to sharp.football and check that out. Let's bring this home as we do every single week with our Uncut Gems. These are players who are available on a lot of waiver wires. They're on benches and deeper leagues, perhaps, that we can outpace expectations this week and put up a starting score. So who do you got this week, Rich?
Yeah, I'll do a little gross one for you this week. My guy is going to be Thomas Tremble of the Carolina Panthers.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. I mean, he was a part-time player. He was just under 70% route participation, but I mean, that's still enough, I think, to get there in this particular matchup. He was targeted on a career high 30% of his routes. Probably not going to happen again, but this would be a matchup for him to still stay involved. I mean, Carolina doesn't have an established wide receiver too, and the Dolphins have been a team we have just gone back to the well on with tight end play kind of this whole season. Teams have targeted or tight ends have 29% of the receptions that the Dolphins have allowed. That's fourth in the NFL. They're 29th in yards per target to tight ends. They are 26 in receptions allowed per game to tight ends. He had a second touchdown that came back, was ruled down at the 1 yard line, but yeah, you might have Tucker Kraft on bye. You might have even been playing Kyle Pitts, who's on bye. Tight end, once again, not very good for fantasy football. Never early tight end. Remind everyone too. Never early tight end. So if you're scrambling, maybe you've been playing David Njoku and you're done. Maybe you've been playing TJ Hawkinson and you're like, I'm not doing it anymore. Tommy Tremble, they're out there for you.
There were actually a lot of names on the wire this week that I was somewhat interested in. I remain somewhat interested in Dalton Schultz.
I know you keep doing the Dalton Schultz agenda
just because of the matchup and how much he's playing. But Mason Taylor is out there. The other side of that game with Darren Waller, right? We need him to play more. Like he was on the field for 37%.
But that was
the route on 37.
Had a red zone roll right out of rip. Tyreek Hill gets injured.
I could definitely make a Darren Waller case this week, especially since you mentioned how good the matchup is for the Dolphins. A better matchup for tight ends is the Panthers. The Panthers are giving up a little bit over, I think, 10 yards per target to tight ends.
10.9.
That's not ideal. That's certainly not ideal for them. As much as they've been, they've been okay against the wide receivers. It hasn't been as good. All right, I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to stay super on brand for me, and I'm going to say Darius Slayton. And Anybody who read the waiver column this week is not going to be surprised by that. Anybody who's ever heard me talk about Darius Slayton or tried to convince Rich to draft Darius Slayton along with Jackson Dart in various
Slayton Dart bags are up
in various best ball drafts, we'll know that Slayton was second in target rate last year with Malik Neighbors off the field. He led the team with 1.82 yards per route run. Not a great rate, but still not a bad rate. I think everybody by now knows about his performances with Neighbors off the field last year. Those have been cited to death this week. It's probably not smart to throw cold water on my own pick, but I do have to say this is like a brand pick. I just have to pick Darius Slayton. There are some concerns, and this is not going to hit if the Giants don't start throwing the ball downfield, which they shockingly did not do a ton of last week. I thought, based on who Dart was, or at least who I thought Dart was coming out of college, that we were going to see him really bomb down the field. It was his first start. It was against a good defense, but he averaged just 6.3 air yards per target. We really need him to push the ball down the field for Slayton to hit. If he does, though, I mean, this matchup is great. Saints are second to last, allowing 12 yards per target to boundary receivers this season. Everything matches up for Slayton. We just need Dart to actually throw the ball down the field. That makes sense that will happen as he gets more comfortable, to me, based on who he is, who he was in college. But yeah, we need that to happen for Slayton to hit, and hopefully it happens this week. And I would also like to thank the Packers for being on bye so I can stop the Dontavian Wicks stream. I really appreciate y'all doing that, because I have completely now given up on Dontavian Wicks. This is your opportunity to make fun of me for Darius Slayton, Rich.
No. I actually agree with you from like a season-long perspective, and like maybe some player prop stuff for maybe a Slayton longest catch here, because the Saints been bad against outside receivers. My general concern of like chasing this from like a season league or like trying to latch onto those splits in DFS is just the passing value of this game. The Giants and Dart's first start, they had a 43.5% dropback rate. It was 31st in the NFL. We expect them to kind of control this game, or at least, be in neutral game script. I haven't seen if it swung. The Saints actually opened as favorites in this game.
The Saints are still favorites in this game.
But we expect it to be kind of neutrally game script. I will say, last week, big time coming out party for your Penn State guy, Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter had an incredible game last week, and he could be a problem because they changed his position last week. Let's see if they do that again this week. But if he plays like he did last week, like this dude's going to be coming for some defensive player of the year stuff, rookie of the year.
As it turns out, Abdul Carter's good. And as Penn State learned at one point in his career, if you move him to the edge, he's even better. So it was good. It was definitely good to see that. We won't talk about the rest of Penn State's week. We're just going to leave that. We're going to leave that.
Sorry.
We're going to leave it alone. But that's neither here nor there. That's it for us for this week. We'll be back next week to cover all of week 6, talk about all the things we got wrong on this podcast episode. I'm sure we got some of it wrong, and we'll be back to mea culpa, as we always are when that happens. Remember to head over to sharp.football, take advantage of the deal this week. Remember to subscribe wherever you find us on YouTube, in your podcast player of choice. Hit that subscribe button. We appreciate the support. It really does help us, and we'll be back to talk with you next week.